Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode of Dome TV. Today I have a very special guest of the show. If you're a fan of the show, you know you've seen this brother a lot. He's a great scholar. He's a great artist. He got a lot of other things going on too on deck that you'll probably find out about sooner or later. But yeah, my brother Slank, man, appreciate you for coming through.
Thanks for having me on. It's good to be back on. Yeah.
No doubt, no doubt. Let's get it. So today, we're going to be talking about the history of black music and the U.S. State Department. Also, within that, we're going to be talking. Slank recently had a debate with Chuck D, and also, somewhat of a back and forth conversation with D1. And stay tuned, and you'll find out how this all ties in. But first, I kind of want to lay the groundwork for everything. Um, for those who don't know, what is the U.S. State Department and what is it designed to do?
Oh yeah, it's basically the uh, foreign policy department of the executive branch. So
Mhm.
like State Department is tasked with carrying out the president's agenda, foreign policy wise, diplomacy wise. Uh, yeah, so whether it be like meeting with foreign leaders for trade deals or military arrangements, that's kind of what the State Department basically a bunch of different officials in it. Secretary of State would be the highest one, and they're pretty high up in the rank as far as like succession after
Hmm.
the president too. I
Hmm.
think maybe like top five. I can't remember the exact order, but yeah. So yeah, basically to carry out the wishes of the president as far as foreign policy is concerned,
Right.
and it's not just above the board diplomatic stuff. It gets into a lot more covert uh, protecting American interests and any by any means necessary, whether that be coups, uh, you know what I'm saying, supporting uh, what would be like terrorist attacks in other countries, things like that. So and also like in different countries, the U.S. embassy would be where the U.S. State Department works at. So in whatever country, and the U.S. embassy is going to have your State Department officials there, ambassadors and whatnot. But the CIA also works out of these U.S. embassies. So uh, a lot of the CIA activity and the shady things, nefarious activities they're doing overseas are going to be coming out of the U.S. State Department, basically.
Right, right. Indeed, indeed. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that it's not just all all fluff. There's some covert, sinister stuff that happens that um is you that a lot of people may not be aware of. And again, like you said, being able to uh, uh, cause coups or you know this whole idea of teaching the world American values and diplomacy is really just code word for spreading American imperialism. And I'm glad you mentioned that it's not just the things that we see, but a lot of what goes on are the things that we don't see, that we know that happens, right? But happen behind the scenes. Um, and so the for those who don't know, there in the 50s, there was a U.S. State Department sponsored program and set of musical tours where called the Jazz Ambassadors. And they were toured all over Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Central, Southern Asia, Africa, to spread cultural diplomacy, what from what they say, right? And to promote American values globally. This was like actually what they said. And mind you, this is the 50s where we are we are we're in the Cold War, the Civil Rights Movement, a lot of things going on at this time. And the America felt pressure from the outside world because of its treatment of African Americans at home. and the outside world was holding a mirror to America and say, hey, look, like what can you tell us whenever you treat your own citizens like this because of the color of their skin? So with that said, there were many jazz musicians that we know of who participated in this jazz ambassadors program. One, Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman, Dave Brubeck, Dizzy Gillespie. The one we're going to talk about here at the moment, Louis Armstrong. And I just kind of want to preface it for the people. Louis Armstrong, uh, in the beginning, declined this offer. And to to a lot of other jazz musicians and a lot of people in the black community, Louis Armstrong was often accused of shucking and jiving, right? And this was one of the first times where they're like, oh, okay, Louis Armstrong, because it was about the Little Rock Nine, and he was saying, hey, if you can't offer them protection, what do I need to be going overseas for to spread diplomacy, right? But okay, so I just kind of wanted to lay the groundwork to people who may not be familiar with the Jazz Ambassadors program and tour of the 50s and I guess maybe 60s. But so the question I have for you is how did the refusal of Louis Armstrong to serve as the first official jazz ambassador in protest against the US government's failure to enforce integration during the Little Rock crisis expose the contradictions between the State Department's cultural diplomacy efforts and the reality of racial injustice in America?
No, yeah, yeah, like you said, he was offered in 57 to go, I think, go to the Soviet Union as part of this U.S. State Department Culture Ambassador program. But he declined it because of what was happening with integration in Little Rock. You know, the governor sending out troops to prevent children from going to school for the color of their skin type shit. So, uh, and this is 3 years after the Supreme Court decision supposed to be integrating schools, and you still have this kind of big
Hmm.
uh, fight over just letting people go to school in interracial schools or whatever. So yeah, the fact that he took that stand then and said, I'm not going to go make it seem like everything's all good overseas and smile and sing and dance and portray the image that, yeah, the racial relations are actually okay in America. Look, they sent us Dizzy Gillespie or Louis Armstrong to do some song. Like he was like, nah, I'm not going to do that right now. But but then a couple years later, he did it in like 1960. I don't know if it was a different administration or something. Maybe that
Hmm.
changed his mind, but
Yeah.
because it might have been I forget when Kennedy was elected,
Hmm. I
but
do
yeah,
too.
something like that, like maybe 1961 or something. But yeah, basically the reason the State Department was trying to do this was like the U.S. during this time, Cold War and everything, was always putting down Russia as like uh, suppressing people's freedoms, the USSR, the whole anti-communist thing, and so like the USSR was saying, hey, y'all don't even treat your own people in your own country, uh, even let them experience freedoms. How can you be pointing the finger at us, like you're saying? And that was the whole point of this Jazz Ambassador program. It's a big PR thing to send uh, black artists around the world in the 50s to make it look like, hey, it's not that bad over here. Look, we got these black artists that are
Right.
having a good time. Then they're able to come over and see y'all. And there's also because at this time a lot more African and Asian countries were
Mm.
getting their independence and coming up. So the United States knew we can't just go over and deal with Britain or France in Africa to get resources anymore. We got to deal with independent Ghana or independent, uh, you know what I'm saying, wherever Egypt or
Mhm.
wherever they want the resources from Congo. So they had to make it look like things were getting better over here because if you're trying to deal with these African liberation leaders, they're not going to want to give the U.S. the minerals or keep the same trade deals if they see what's
Mm.
happening look like them overseas, or if they can't even go to the U.S. and stay in a hotel during like a diplomatic mission. So, yeah, I think Louis Armstrong made the right decision the first time.
Absolutely.
saying, "Hey, we don't have rights here, so I'm not going to go overseas and pretend like it's all good to try to uh, repair y'all's image abroad in the emerging like African Asian world." But the second time, I don't know what the specific reasons, but he decided to go ahead and do it. And yeah, I feel like the jazz ambassador, even today, the program with the hip hop ambassadors that they got going on at the State Department with between YouTube Music, Blinken, Chuck
Hmm.
D got signed on, D1 is on there. I feel like a lot of that is the same thing. It's a PR thing to
Yeah,
send. Yeah,
yeah, no, absolutely. And I like one thing that you mentioned, like the uh, we're dealing at a time where African nations are finding their independence, and people like Nkrumah had been over here and understood what racism was here, and Azikiwe of Nigeria, they've been here, and so it's not even just speculation on how, Africans were treated in America. They knew because they were here. And you're right. I totally agree. Louis Armstrong made the obviously the right decision. I think it showed more of a uh, cultural and political awareness that Louis Armstrong sometimes doesn't get enough credit for, maybe. Um, and again, I don't know why he chose to take the offer the second time. Again, that's probably something I'll have to research later. But again, I kind of wanted to start here to show the evolution of it because, we're going to get into hip hop in just a second. And so, um, in what ways did the use of the U.S. government's use of jazz diplomacy during the Cold War, including the portrayal of Armstrong's defiance as a sign of American freedom of speech, reflect the strategic attempt to mask domestic racial inequalities and promote a misleading image of democracy and equality abroad?
yeah. No, just kind of like I was saying before, it was like a PR thing with these newly emerging African Asian countries getting control of their own countries and stuff, and also with the Cold War, uh, the U.S. was trying to clean up its image internationally in the UN, and also just to be able to go into Africa and Asia and deal with these new leaders uh, and pretend that things were that they really were the beacon of democracy and freedom and all that. Uh, so yeah, it was just a effort to clean up the U.S. image abroad on race relations because they were really getting pushed on that, especially once the civil rights movement started really kicking off, and everybody could see on TV internationally like what was happening in Birmingham or
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so for those who don't know, um, Chuck D is now in the U.S. State Department's hip hop ambassador program. I don't know what they call it, but I mean that's what
yeah, something like
yeah.
that.
D1, the quote unquote conscious Christian rapper is as well. And so I remember on Twitter, uh, obviously you and others brought this attention to, the public as like, hey, Chuck D, the person who authored Fight the Power and so many of the hits that we grew up with that even probably helped to radicalize us, you know, because music often, Amiri Baraka spoke on like powerful, the power that music has to transform the minds of people. And Public Enemy was definitely one of those groups for a lot of people growing up, for people that were young then, for people that were, already, adults and in the movement. Like this, that was a big deal. And to see that he works for the US State Department obviously was a big letdown and disappointment for a lot of people. And then so he saw the conversation that was going on online, and then he began to respond, which eventually led to uh, a debate being set up between you and him, which is on YouTube now. And so for those who didn't see the debate, I'll have the link for the debate in the description. But for those who didn't see the debate, could you explain the initial purpose of the debate and kind of summarize the main arguments on both sides? And then we'll get into, more details of the debate, I would say.
Yeah. Uh, no, so originally I had seen the headlines that, Chuck D signs on to be hip hop cultural ambassador for the State Department. There's pictures of him with Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, who's currently
Mm.
very instrumental in what's going on in Gaza and sending Israel weapons and bombs. And
And
uh,
isn't Blinken the one that also just helped facilitate getting Africa streams removed from YouTube and all of that stuff too?
yeah, and he
Yeah.
uses connections with YouTube to get their YouTube immediately taken because now he's cool with Leor Cohen. They work
Oh,
together, and
wow.
Leor Cohen's head of YouTube Music. So he probably just had to make a phone call to Leor to get
Wow.
Africa Stream taken down. But yeah, so this is a guy who's, carrying out a very imperialist foreign policy agenda on behalf of Biden administration, supporting Israel fully during their genocide in Gaza, uh, supporting Ukraine, neo-Nazis and all that over there in the war in Ukraine. And even his family history, Blinken's grandfather was like a prominent New York attorney who was very instrumental in getting U.S. support for Israel's creation in the 40s. He
Mm,
was close with presidents and ambassadors, things like that back then. And so he was big on the lobbying effort to get Israel, the U.S. to recognize Israel almost immediately after it was founded. So, so yeah, these are the people that I seen Chuck D up there with, smiling, saying he was proud to be, working with and advancing their goals abroad. And so I said something on Twitter like, "Yo, Chuck, are you really rapping for, genocide Joe Biden and all that?" And his responses were very like out there. I don't know how to put it besides that. They're kind of like not making a lot of sense. Basically, talking about the gist of his point seemed to be that if you use technology like Google or YouTube or any of the technology apps or anything, then you're just as complicit as somebody
mm,
like he is who would sign up to explicitly be an ambassador for the U.S. government. He was saying that basically it's 2024 now. The U.S. government doesn't move like they used to in the 50s. It's not the Cold War. So like he kept saying they don't do the same thing twice, implying that they're not using music anymore to advance soft power United States imperialist goals and things like that, which I totally disagree with. But that was the main gist of
mm,
I saw a contradiction in his old music, his old message, and now working for the government.
mhm,
And he didn't see the contradiction like that. He saw it as governments are irrelevant now. It's 2024. Everything's technology. So by working with them, it almost seemed like he thought he was protecting hip hop by like allying with them.
mm,
And so yeah, then Revolutionary Blackout Network, uh Rome, from there he had kind of got into the Twitter thing too and said, yeah, why don't y'all come on our YouTube channel and talk about this?
mhm,
Because he had just been on some other YouTube channels discussing the same thing. And so yeah, I think like the night before it actually happened, he agreed to come on. I didn't know it was really going to be a debate. I thought it was more going to be like discussion, but then like the flyer said like verses and shit.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, but then when we got on there, it wasn't really formatted like a debate for real. It kind of just he kind of talked a lot, was telling like
Yeah.
stories about like seeing bars in the window in Detroit and shit that didn't make any
It was a
relevant
it was a
State
big
Department.
gish gallop, man. I watched it and I was like, I don't even know where this is headed. I couldn't even see a direction of and he and it's interesting because this is the person who said, I got a letter from the government the other day. I opened it and read it. It said they were suckers, right? This is so
The black man, he could never be a veteran.
mm,
like can't trust it. Like there's all kind of
Yeah.
different quotes that just don't go with working for the
U.S. State Department, right? And so his his idea that all right, the U.S. government doesn't do the same thing twice, and the and his idea that they don't move like they used to, and they're not using hip hop in any nefarious way to promote the American agenda. Because I know that obviously, even if it was going to, it would, even if it was going to be a setup debate, this would be one of the things that came up. But he wouldn't allow, he really wouldn't allow you to speak and get your points off. It was just like a big monologue that again didn't seem to have much direction. But so what are your thoughts on the idea that they don't do the same thing twice, and they're not, and they wouldn't use, or they aren't using hip hop in any nefarious forms to push the American agenda?
uh no, I think it's completely wrong. Like it's not like they have the same exact uh directives from the CIA director to do it exactly like they were doing it in 1960. I mean, they have internet now. There's all kind of different, it's modern age, but they still have the same end goals and they use the same avenues to get there. Like it's just updated for just like they're not using jazz anymore, probably they're using hip hop.
Mm,
So like obviously it's not the exact same playbook, but it's the same uh yeah, like Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State specifically said we use hip hop as a chess piece for the U.S. State Department, like diplomatic chess piece. I forget the exact
mm,
quote, paraphrasing, but she definitely said chess piece and hip hop is being used as that. And she was referring to at the time, I think, when the Arab Spring protests were going on in like all the different North African, Middle East countries. She was talking about how they had sent hip hop ambassadors to these places because this program with the hip hop version of it has been going on since the Bush administration.
wow.
They've been sending hip hop, getting hip hop artists, whether they're underground, established artists that are maybe a little bit older, different, all different kinds of artists, sending them to countries that the U.S. has interest in or is trying to steer the government in a certain direction, or that the U.S. is sanctioning, and they'll send them over there to basically identify young people who they can train up as like future civil society leaders,
Hmm.
they say usually, which means like future people they can count on later to be loyal to the U.S. if the government gets overthrown, or uh, they teach them like uh, they'll say like we're doing workshops on democracy and protests and stuff like that. They want to basically get people in these other countries to fight the power against
Yeah.
those governments, not against what I'm saying, U.S. interests and things. So yeah.
I think that's a great point. We're gonna definitely touch on that a little in a minute. Side note, do
Mhm.
they use R&B artists as well?
Uh, so I only know of the hip hop program. They got a program called Next Level.
Hmm.
And so it's just, I guess, people that are, because I don't think Chuck D's technically in the Next Level
Yeah.
program, but
Hmm.
he's like maybe a bigger name. They don't even put him in the Next Level program. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I would think probably. I know I did see one time they have artists like painters and things.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the name of the program, but there's like State Department uh, sculptors and painters. So they probably do it in all genres. And I know at the thing that Chuck D was at, they had a country singer there as well.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, I think they do like multiple genres. I'm not sure of any specific R&B artists though that are
Yeah.
signed.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering because as we talked about jazz earlier and the US State Department's use of jazz, and as we talk about hip hop now, I just want people to understand that the same way hip hop was seen as black, a rebellious African music, so was jazz.
Mm,
And I just really want that point to be driven home because it's really antithetical to what the foundations of these two musical genres are. Whenever you have people like Max Roach and just a lot of the jazz legends, Art Blakey, these are Pan-African people, you know what I mean? And when we look at hip hop and we look at Public Enemy and we see the emergence of D1, who has been in a lot of um podcasts and has new music with, people such as Lupe Fiasco and you know, you see he's a lot more visible than he used to be, right? And he speaks a message of regardless to whether we agree or disagree with the message, he is speaking a message of, cleaning up hip hop. Um, but he's on that State Department list too.
Yeah, he
And
with
yeah,
the next
and
level program.
right. And so again, I'm pretty sure the idea is similar and as far as how you feel about that contradiction. But as far as D1 goes, it seems obviously there's similarities with him and Chuck D, both working for the U.S. State Department. But I think one thing that may be a little bit different is it might be easy for somebody to say, "Oh man, Chuck D's getting old." You know what I'm saying? I'm not, and this is not an excuse, but I'm pretty sure that somebody would possibly use that as an excuse. But D1 is a young man who claims to be in the know. I saw a video that recently where I guess he was in Zimbabwe, and I'm not sure if that was on U.S. State Department mission, or what, but
Yeah, it was.
it was okay. So with
He
him,
was a culture ambassador for the U.S. State Department because he put up a video at the airport when he was going over saying like, "I'm a U.S. State Department culture ambassador." Like he just said it himself. So yeah, it's like not a
so all right. So when it comes to artists like these, is it a thing of them not knowing any better, or
him.
like? Mhm,
Yeah, I think he might actually not know the history. Like I know
mhm,
Chuck D actually does know the history because
mhm,
even at the State Department announcement when he was with Blinken and Leo Cohen and everything, who Leo Cohen is also a very negative influence in hip hop. Like, just it's a crazy like team to be like linked up with. Like,
mhm,
but even when he was at this thing, he was mentioning Ella Fitzgerald in like the past and all these different artists that used to go over with the State Department as jazz ambassador. So he knows about the bad history, but he was trying to distance himself from it. But I don't know if D1 actually knows about the history. And I just thought of this too, like another point to Chuck D's like they don't move like that anymore is I remember in 2021 when the protests in Cuba was popping off, uh there was a whole big scandal because not a scandal, but like it came out in the news basically. I thought it was weird at first 'cause I noticed Marco Rubio posting about rappers and
hmm,
saying this is a good rapper. Like shout out to this guy talking about I think his name was Yo2L or something like that, a Cuban rapper,
mhm,
and he had a song about called like Patria y Vida or something like that.
mhm,
And I was like, why is Marco Rubio like, you
mhm.
know, this right wing uh
Right,
politician shouting
right.
out rappers and stuff? Came to find out that the State Department had a program funding rappers in Cuba that would dissent against the government and
Wow.
make protest songs to try to heighten the protests that were going on against the government at the time. They
Mhm.
were paying NED money, which is the National Endowment for Democracy. It's a soft power organization linked to the State Department.
What's the
U.S.
name? What's the name again?
NED, National Endowment for Democracy.
Okay.
I think the co-founder was his name, like Alan. I had to pull it up here earlier.
Mhm.
I don't know the co-founder's name though. I forget his name, Lowenstein or something. But he had once said that basically the NED does above ground what the CIA used to do underground 25 years ago.
Wow.
There's so much more. I don't know, like just like D1 is able to see no contradiction in signing up. He probably honestly thinks like, oh, this is just like, you know, the the government's not doing anything wrong. They're paying me a grant to fly me over to Africa. I'm gonna get my music out. I'm gonna he probably thinks it's a positive, thing. And it might be like positive workshops and things he's teaching kids that might be positive, But at the end of the day, they're trying to push an imperialist agenda under the guise of this uh, non-threatening diplomacy type of thing. You know what I'm saying? So I
Hmm.
think whereas Chuck D has the knowledge of what the CIA does and stuff, obviously from his music and just his history, I don't think D1 might not have that knowledge, but he's aware of it now because people have,
Yeah.
said stuff like, "Yo, bro, you're working for the government. They're doing these bombings." But
He still don't seem to care.
nah, he was on a podcast
He kind of
saying,
took a shot at you from what I heard. My boy said
mm,
that he thought he didn't mention your name, but I guess on Beehive's show,
I didn't see it.
yeah, he was talking about people. He talking about people criticizing him for his State Department job, but I didn't get a chance to watch it yet.
Nah, yeah, I don't know, because I think some of his critiques of hip hop are valid. Some I think, to me at least, seem kind of corny. But
Yeah.
like uh, at the end of the day, though, like he made a statement about after Rich Homie Quan died about how hip hop has blood on its hands for promoting, I guess, drug use or something like that. And yeah, that is an issue in hip hop where some artists promote drug use and it, but he didn't identify that the labels who aren't run by people like us are the ones incentivizing that kind of self-destructive message, or the fact that the pharmaceutical companies are a big issue behind
Mm,
the epidemic of people popping. He's not going to go after these like the major root causes of it. He's just gonna like say, "Oh, hip hop, we got a problem ourselves for like letting this
yeah.
happen." And at the same time, you're talking about blood on the hands, but you're working for the State Department during the genocide. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's just contradictory. Like I appreciate the critiques that anybody's gonna do of like anything they see wrong. You know what I'm saying? But when you're publicly putting yourself out there as working with the government who are doing the most wrong, in my opinion, uh, in our time right now, is kind of like the message don't make
All right.
sense.
So we all grew up on hip hop pretty much. Um, we are black people in America. Trusting the government in 2024 is crazy, man. Like, regardless to how much of studying or knowledge of self you may have, it's something that black people in this country knew innately that I you can never trust the intentions of the government. Even if you've never read a book in your life, we this is something that we knew, right? Like, what is the incentive of a D1 or a Chuck D to accept these roles? Are they getting paid?
I think the ones that they actually send over to other countries, like he went to Zimbabwe recently, D1. I believe they get grants, is
Mm,
what I'm thinking, like government grants,
hmm.
and probably pay for their airfare, the hotel. It probably, you know what I'm saying, probably makes you feel like you're a big artist. You're getting flown to other countries. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe it also it might just be a thing too, where like one thing that Chuck D said during one of uh during the Revolutionary Blackout Network was like the people got to eat type shit. I don't remember the exact
Yeah.
words, but it
Yeah.
might be a thing where like they feel like the community isn't supporting their artwork, so fuck it, I'm gonna go work for the government or something. You know what I'm saying? Some shit like that. I don't agree
Hmm.
with that, but like it's because I don't see how that's gonna help the community fuck with your artwork now.
Nah, especially knowing who your core fan base is, right? It's like that's crazy. You kind of mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, but Wise Intelligent in an interview suggested that, conscious rappers known for critiquing and challenging empire and power might be used by the U.S. State Department to influence people in nations targeted for destabilization by organizing concerts similar to a fight to power, right? And so do you think like this is a plausible scenario? Like, is that something that they would do or possibly are doing now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because like with the Cuba example, they were literally paying pretty well-known artists down in Cuba, hip hop artists, to make protest songs to stir up anti-Cuban government uh, sentiment among the masses of Cuban people. It didn't work, obviously,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's something that they're definitely doing. And also, I feel like the reason that they had Chuck D up there at the White House with Blinken versus maybe like a D1 or somebody else is because he had that
Mm,
strong protest theme message. So it's always like they just like with Martin Luther King, the US government, the military, everything helped kill Martin Luther King, literally had Green Beret snipers on the scene, all that. And then after he's dead, they co-opt his message, tone it down to make it fit into
mm,
a acceptable message, and then
mm,
they put Martin Luther King hard, make it, make it a holiday
mm.
and teach you the parts they want you to
A
know about.
symbol of American democracy and American freedom, right?
Yeah, like we let people look how celebrated Martin Luther King is, like even though they killed him, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's the same with the government was probably like, oh, we can get Chuck D to do this. That's going to be good because it'll make us look very like 21st century. You know what I'm saying? Because the
Hmm.
Democrats nowadays are all about looking more inclusive, even while they do things that are the opposite overseas and here. So having somebody that used to stand for this strong, uh, it's just like when Chuck D a couple years ago was doing Fight the Power for Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail. You know what I mean? Like in 2020 though, like I don't know, like that's not the same message that I thought the song originally had was now we're gonna fight the power by voting for Bernie Sanders. Like I was
Right.
gonna fight the power by supporting Anthony Blinken. It just keeps going farther and farther. Uh, And he even brought up a story about how Castro didn't want him, Chuck D, to go down to Cuba at one point because he said we weren't gonna have no fight the power down there. And it's like, yeah, because you're trying to bring a message that's meant for a certain
Yeah.
place to a different place. So they already fought the power in 59,
Right.
kicked out the US government. They don't need a person sent and who's working, he wasn't working with them then, but who
Mhm.
open to working with the US government. They don't need him coming down and telling them how to fight the power in in Cuba, in like the
Right.
90s. So like uh so yeah, I think by co-opting some of these probably more liberally inclined former like more radical protest rapper type things, they can send them over to Syria and get them to teach young people in Syria how to fight the power so they can make sure that they have enough have more protests going on. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah. And,
yeah.
and no, no, absolutely. And yeah, I meant to ask you, so what was D1's response to the critique of him working for the US State Department once, because it was, I mean, you definitely let him know, but it was a lot of people that let him know. And I saw different threads where he might even be saying something with a positive message, and they're like, yo, but you work for the US State Department. Like, he there was really on his head about it. Like, so what was his response? What was his reaction?
He kind of like I remember when I said something about it first on Twitter, he responded one time and kind of like joked, kind of like LOL, I'm gonna pray for y'all type of shit. So
Hmm.
more just like a dismissive, like
Yeah.
not acknowledging it. And then even deeper into the thread, I think we was uh like me and some other people were pointing out what the State Department has done with music ambassadors in the past, even pointing out the Cuba thing as recently as 2021. And he was saying like if we don't like America, then leave it type shit.
Oh,
But, like
snap.
yeah, he gave
He
me like a
said
real
that?
he didn't say go back to Africa,
Yeah,
but it was
yeah.
basically like a real redneck response. And I was like, unfortunately, I don't got State Department money to go travel back to Zimbabwe like you do. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? Like,
right.
I hate America so much, why you live here. That was basically his response.
That's crazy.
I
That's
mean,
cr
you live here because, that, during slavery, they took African. Like, I literally, like,
yeah.
took him through the whole process of how we moved here. And he's like, man, well, but he wasn't feeling it.
You know what's kind of weird about that, bro, is so with his message being, clean up hip hop.
Yeah.
And and now obviously we know he works for the US State Department, and for him to have a response to say something, it's like, if you don't like America, you go back to Africa type of thing, right? First off, why would this be the type of person you would send to Africa, right? So, you know what I mean? Second, and but it seems like his thing is, at this point, blaming us. His message now seems to be surrounded, like centered around blaming us for our own victimization, whether it's in the music industry. Who was that? Leo Cohen that was on the Breakfast Club that was saying, "Hey, yeah, we promote drug use in music because our kids, our families got to eat."
That was
Right?
Leo.
Yeah. So it's like again, these guys are never talking about them bringing any of that to light. It's always us and the people who have the least, the people who have as far as even material wealth or power, right, in this nation. It makes me really look at his message really weird at this point.
Yeah. No, like Sonny Toure, who I got,
Yeah, well, peace to Sonny.
uh, he brought up a good point before where he was talking about how rappers can be, there's like some rappers and artists that can be like spiritually conscious and
Mm,
like politically conscious. It's like two different things. So some
mm,
rapper might, uh, pre like a D1 message where it's like they're talking about, maybe like self-improvement and like finding your inner strength, all this kind of stuff. But like on the political side of it, they don't
yeah.
follow those same principles through kind of.
Mm,
And it seems like the US government has an easier time getting those guys type shit
mm,
versus to be on these hip hop diplomacy uh trips and everything,
mm.
which is why it was shocking that Chuck D was also part of it because he's somebody that I thought saw as more like politically conscious as well, not just,
And
like a
I think that's again one of the parts that's really um disappointing to a lot of people is because I think we know he knows better, right? Like we know that, especially um when he was younger, we know some of the books he read and some of the movements that he was involved in. Like it's hard to feel like he doesn't know better, you know?
no facts. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get it. But I do agree with you and Sonny about um two different type of conscious MCs. Some are more esoteric in nature or just have a positive message, right? Um, Others are politically conscious, and that would be like a coup or a Dept or somebody like that. Crazy part is I would have put Public Enemy in that category at one time, you know?
Facts.
And so the involvement of these rappers, I would say, I guess, in State Department activities, do you, and we kind of talked about this already, but do you see this as a strategic move by the government to mitigate criticism or legitimize its policies? Especially the kind of the same thing that um, Louis Armstrong resisted in the beginning, where, hey, like look what's happening to my people here. And does this, because with hip hop being such a universal thing now, right? Like we're gonna find you can find hip hop in every continent where that people live on, right? They have their own artists. Many of their artists are political MCs, right? All around the world. But African Americans for a long time have been um, viewed by the world, especially the black and brown world, in a lot of cases of kind of um, being one of the groups that puts the world up on what's cool, right? Um, and so with these, U.S. state ambassador rappers going over there, it feels like it kind of feels like it's tying black people in America to this face of empire, right? By using something that we created in the beginning to be a voice of our struggle within this empire to now it being one and the same. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, like how, yeah, that goes with, yeah, how they like kind of co-opt the parts they want to use or something, just like with Martin Luther King.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it also kind of ties in with the another thing I've been thinking about too is like back in, let's say, like the 50s when Louis Armstrong denied the first time in 57. I feel like the whole range of black people in the US from more conservative to radical all had more solidarity in the fact that they
Hmm.
were overt
Hmm.
approach. Like couldn't even go to like a lunch counter or a bathroom or water fountain. So like everybody was cool. Like everybody within the black community for the most part was cool with fighting that,
Yeah.
overt racism. Whereas now we've had Obama as president. We have, military generals right now that are black Americans. We have, vice president, all
Hmm.
that running for president, all that kind of stuff. So like uh now I feel like more people are more individualized and feel like they can get a comfortable spot in the
Yeah.
empire
Yeah.
and and kind of like are willing more to lend their face out there to the empire to be that ambassador or that symbol of America abroad type of thing. Where back in the day that would have been seen more, that would have been seen in a worse light back in the day because
Yeah.
that were for all of us on a real everyday level and in so many aspects. So I don't know. I feel like that might have something to do with how black culture is now being used more as America. But I think it's still the same. I think that the same like PR game plan
Hmm.
to make it look like America wasn't racist back in the day. They sent jazz music. Now they're going to send uh, rap artists for the same reason, same stuff. Because police are still killing us here. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Incarceration still exists. There's still so many wealth gaps, socioeconomic, everything problems going on in Black America, and that's still an issue of trying to raise our America's image abroad because there's still evil countries that what I'm saying that the U.S. is trying to show how bad they are. How can they say how bad Putin in Russia or Ibrahim Traore in the Sahel states? How can they like point fingers at them if they're still treating black people here bad? So it's the same thing. We'll send some rappers out. They'll send
Yeah.
it down. It looks like everything's all good. Uh, yeah, shit
You
like
know,
that.
that's crazy too, because like at one point in hip hop, there was two things that if somebody thought you were if you somebody thought that you belonged to either one of these two groups, it could have meant the end of your career. One being a biter, the other being a sellout, right? And now it's just like anything goes. You know what I'm saying? Um, what do you? I find I find it interesting, like how the whole I guess alleged attack on Donald Trump, and then how he was wanting to use, or I don't know if he did or not because I don't really watch that, but I think he used like he walked out the 50 Cent's Mini Men or something, and they had Kid Rock perform at their one of their conventions, He- and we know Kid Rock got his start in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? He was like a white dude that dressed like Run DMC. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It
the
had a
icon.
yeah, it had a little right, right. And then and then at the DNC, is Megan Thee Stallion, Lil Jon. Again, uh, hip hop, how politicians are now incorporating it with their strategies as far as how they want to reach the people. um didn't at one time I don't know if it was Hillary, because I don't want to put that on that man if he didn't come out there with it, but didn't Jay come out on stage with one of these politicians? I can't remember who it was.
Possible. I know Diddy was for Hillary.
Yeah, that's that's crazy. That's
Voter, voter die campaign.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. And so yeah, the vote with the hip hop getting behind the voter die campaign, right? Unless you're voting for a third party, right? But you know what I'm saying? We saw how the Breakfast Club is a hip hop media. thing, and they've, for the past 10 years, or maybe even longer than that, been wanting to, I guess, have a quote unquote political side to what they're doing. But and none of it is radical, right? Like none of it. Um, Even when Obama was president, I don't even recall what they were there for, but I remember he invited about 30 MCs to the White House. N- Most of those MCs didn't even seem like they were conscious MCs that talk about anything that relates to the black struggle in the first place, right? But all right, so this use of hip hop, and you stated that it's been going on like longer than we probably realized with the George Bush administration, but now it's really overt, it's really in your face. Um, like, what are your thoughts about how politicians are using hip hop in this manner now? And people seem to love it, right?
Yeah, no, I say it's shocking how accepted it is.
Hmm.
Like people mainly uh like Megan Thee Stallion performs at a Kamala event, or Fat Joe was like rapping for Joe Biden a couple.
Yeah, yeah.
Just weird, and like was it used to be like I'll never have dinner with the president. It was a big
President,
thing. But
right?
they all trying to have dinner with the
They are,
president,
right,
all the
right.
candidates and anybody like this. It I don't know. I guess hip hop is just at least mainstream hip hop is just so far from the roots of it as far as because even Ice Cube, who said I'll never have dinner to the president with the president, is now like very close with the Zionist Organization of America. Spoke at their gala. Uh,
Mm.
more trying to be uh, in the establishment politics arena. Trying to do like contracts with Black America, trying to meet with the different campaigns.
And was it KRS One with Eric Adams like a year or
Yeah,
two?
they
Yeah.
were getting keys to the city, or I don't know if it was some kind of award for the 50th uh, birthday of hip hop or whatever.
Hmm.
So now you got all these, yeah, KRS-One, who, definitely didn't used to be a very big fan of the Police as far as the music I listened to of him. Now, like rapping for the mayor of New York, who's a known police, like he's a
Yeah.
police officer. That's what he does.
Yeah.
So
Probably
it's,
the most violent and corrupt police department in America, right?
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. It's like people a lot. It seems like a lot of people have the mentality of Chuck D. Like it's not 1950 no more. They don't move like that anymore. It's okay to go to the police dinners and the mayor's
Mm.
office, get awards and sign deals with the State Department and all that. Yeah, that's like not frowned upon or seen as being a sellout anymore. Almost, I think it has to do with the Obama thing too. Back to that, like once we had a black president, it seemed like more people got more felt more ties to the U.S. almost like we have our ability to reach the highest levels now, so
Hmm.
it's not as selling out to I guess rap for Joe Biden or whatever. Like it's yeah, I guess people feel like it's we're now somewhat more accepted into the mainstream America, so it's not a sellout move, I guess, but I still feel like it is because of like what the U.S. government's still doing,
Hmm.
and even with the jazz ambassadors, Louis Armstrong the first time said no. The second time he gets over there and he thinks he's meeting people from the U.S. State Department. He's really meeting Larry Devlin and different CIA agents
Mm.
who and Shambi. Like he was giving concerts in Katanga where Lamoon was about to be shortly executed,
Wow.
with Shambi, the puppet leader of Katanga, different officials from Union Mineral, who are like one of the most evil Belgian mineral companies in Congo. They're all there, front row, CIA agents, uh, puppet leaders, killers of Lumumba, having a good time while he's singing and dancing and shit, or playing the jazz. And like, it's fucked up. I don't know. It's just something
Yeah.
real. I like using black culture as a cover to get in there and attack black people.
Yeah.
And act like black interests and nationhood and everything like that.
No, man, that yeah, I agree. That's crazy. this is very it's very vile, right? But do you think like the public acceptance of this, right? In America, especially amongst our community, do you think this is an example of propaganda and coercion and even counterinsurgency being a lot more sophisticated than it used to be?
Yeah. In a way, it's kind of the like the NED founder guy, I forget his name,
Hmm.
Down for Democracy guy, had said that they do co overtly what they used to do covertly with the CIA.
Mm.
It's kind of because people don't care as much anymore. Almost, it's like yeah, it's so desensitized, I guess, to seeing now like every campaign has a rapper rapping for him. Even like the smaller Democratic campaigns a couple years ago had like Juvenile rapping for Tom Steyer with his own version of back that vote
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
like,
I remember that. That's crazy, man. Come
and
on.
I feel like it's also the how capitalist themed hip hop has gotten as well.
Mm, hmm.
Where it's like the automatic reply to somebody being like, "Oh, well, he's working, selling out to the white man or working for the government." They'll be like, "Well, you got to get your bag." You know what I'm saying? Like it's that real individualistic mindset now, which is I feel like way more prominent than it was, say, in like the '70s or something when hip hop is first emerging in the '80s. So it's yeah, it seems like we're a lot less as a culture on like in tune.
Hmm.
Like I said, because of the lack of uh the extreme forms of overt racism, like back in the day, where like you couldn't even go to the store, or like
Hmm.
since that's since basic concessions by the government, this is part of the plan. I feel like they give you concessions to like pacify you to make you okay with to what's going on. So I feel like that's what happened, and it's just like accelerating and getting into all different aspects of our culture.
Yeah, again becomes normalized to us. Like this is normal, uh, a normal way of living, right? The government is supposed to act this way. Like it's all become normalized and internalized, and it's again, man, with hip hop having a history of being fight the power. It's really disappointing when that energy that energy is so that energy dwindles away to the point where those same artists are working for the same powers that oppress us and and the entire world. We should know by now that regardless of how much you read, that American foreign policy is only designed to extract as much as it can, to make sure those countries fall in line with Western imperialism, and that's it. It's not. They don't do anything out of any type of goodwill. And so it's crazy that we've gotten here. I wanted to ask you this before we go, bro. Um, as somebody who is an MC, your music always has themes of black radical thought and revolution. Um, as somebody who is a great MC themselves, when you look at it from an MC perspective, like what do you what do you feel about the current I guess the current wave of artists being so easily compromised?
Yeah. No, I think it's not as so like basically there's so many artists that are still like have like really good messages, really strong black messages. It's just all underground now, it seems
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
So like uh yeah, I would just say like for people that want like a better message, just look underground because there's so many artists out there that are still keeping hip hop uh doing hip hop in a way that's more true to the origins and a lot of rappers aren't willing to sell out for the government. You know what I'm saying? Like that really hold true to that. And I just think it's more mainstream now
Yeah,
because of how controlled that is, where like the only ones we get to see or that they put on our TV are the ones that are pushing these messages that are compatible with the government. And but like when you really talk to people and like just online in general outside, like a lot of people still, if you say like Chuck D's working for the government, they're not going to think it's all good. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah.
Makes me like the regular person is still understands what hip hop is meant to be. Yeah, I don't
And
know.
and understands what the government is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. So I'm the link for Apple Music and Spotify, Slank. Um definitely y'all check that out. It's great music, man. Um and so again, I appreciate you for coming through every time, man. It's always a good conversation. So again, man, I appreciate everything that you're doing. Always you know, keeping us aware of what's going on. Um I appreciate how you I appreciate you posting old books, man, because I be a lot of this stuff is stuff that I've went and got a lot of stuff you post I've gone back and gotten and um really added on to just my understanding of our history and what goes on. And so again, man, appreciate you for all you do, bro.
I appreciate you too. And same like I think you had posted White Malice, one of the
Mm,
books that a lot of this information about just Africa and the CIA and State Department
hmm
is in that book. So definitely anybody looking for more information on history of the jazz ambassadors, White Malice, I forget the author's name, Susan something.
Yeah, Susan Williams.
Susan Williams. Yeah.
Yeah. hmm
Check that one out.
No doubt. All right, to the next time, man. You know, y'all be easy. Again, appreciate you for coming through, bro.
I appreciate it. Peace.
Peace.